Welcome. We appreciate you joining us today. My name is Sean Gardner. I'm the sales manager here at Untangle. We're going to be discussing keeping your students and staff safe during the 2013-2014 school year. And so hopefully you'll get some good information out of this. We'll be recording the webinar as well for those of you that were not able to attend live, and those of you that are attending live that want to review it, we'll be actually sending out the recorded version of this in the next 24 hours. A couple of housekeeping items. If you can't hear me very well, you can use the question and answer panel or the audio panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We will be answering questions throughout. We have one of our support engineers on the line to help. Although this is not a support presentation, this is more of a sales educational presentation, but we do have some questions and answers that can be handled by them and some other staff members as well. What we'll be talking about today is challenges that schools are facing as far as bring your own device and that kind of thing. We'll kind of briefly touch on that, but we do have some features that we can go over. We'll be talking about the regulations that are involved with running a school and managing the internet connection and monitoring what's happening. We'll be giving a brief demonstration of Untangle. We'll be covering off some of the Untangle education packages that we offer, and then we'll kind of go over a little bit of a wrap-up with some of the things that we've pointed to and talked about today. Got a lot to cover, so we'll hopefully get started. Some of the challenges that we have are in this, among this list is keeping students safe online when they're bringing in their own devices as well as using devices that the school owns. And so it's certainly important that when they're on your network that you're able to offer as much safety from bad content as well as from content that could potentially hurt them. As far as keeping students focused, there's a lot of criteria and a lot of educational material that is being done online now. Teachers are utilizing Facebook and as well as YouTube, and so there's some different things that you have to really grapple with as network admins or technology coordinators for your different networks. You want to be able to enforce your network policy. We can use a captive portal feature that we offer, and also make sure that you are letting people know what the acceptable use policy is when they bring in their own device. In addition, you want to make sure that you guys are in compliance with the CIPA requirements and regulations. We'll talk a little bit about what CIPA is and whose responsibility it is to do what. Also, we want to help you reduce your liability. Those are some of the challenges you have to deal with. When people are downloading illegal content or copyrighted material, certainly you might get a letter from the FCC or from the piracy guys indicating that you need a cease and desist letter. Those are always fun to get. And using Untangle, you can certainly stop people from going to websites where that content is readily available. Keeping the network safe from threats, both from hacking as well as from attacks that might actually happen. And then, restoring network performance. There's a lot of bandwidth is wasted on applications or activities that really are not within the confines of the network policy. And so you want to prioritize certain applications and deprioritize other activities or even block those other activities. Currently, really a firewall is just not cutting the mustard, and that's been the case for quite a while now with a lot of the new developing technologies out there. There's a lot of distractions and temptations out there. This is just a glimpse at some of the ones that you come up with or that you might face on your networks. And controlling them and making sure that they're used for what you want to have them be used for is certainly important. There's also a lot of traps, where there's free download offers and spoofing and phishing sites that take advantage of PayPal and eBay, and even typos, as far as URL squatting it goes. If they're typing in and they mistype a URL, a lot of times it'll take them to content that may be against policy or maybe even be harmful to the network or the computer they're on. Network performance, certainly we want to stop or control these types of different things, whether it be sharing music or streaming video, as well as managing BitTorrent and other things. So it's definitely important to make sure you restore that network performance. As far as the regulatory side of the conversation goes, Children's Internet Protection Act basically was enacted to help control or to keep offensive content from being exposed to your children or to children under the age of 17 or 17 and under, actually, at schools and libraries. And the requirements really are governed by the fact that different schools are trying to get E-rate funding and the program that entails. It's always been a gripe of mine that they won't pay for web content filtering, but yet they require it for you to be able to be E-rate eligible. So it's one of those dichotomies that we get in government. So hopefully that can be addressed or even worked on in some future period. As far as complying with CIPA, there's 3 different sections or pieces to that puzzle. One is to provide technology protection measures, and we'll talk a little bit about each of these in a minute. 2 is internet safety policy, and that deals with enforcement, education, and monitoring. And then, of course, certification. As far as the technology protection measure goes, there's no silver bullet, I guess is probably the best term, but really what you have to do is make your best effort to filter internet access to visual depictions that are obscene or child pornography, or actually could be harmful or considered harmful to minors. And so, as I mentioned before, there's no specifics on really the effectiveness measure, and it's certainly not required to be 100% effective, but you want to make your best effort with the technology that's available out there. And of course, that in conjunction with the budget that you have available too. So, as far as the policy is concerned, when you have an internet safety policy, you want to make sure that it addresses several things. It wants a technology protection measure of some sort of filtering or content monitoring, of course, which we talked about. You want to make sure that access to minors to inappropriate matter is covered and monitored and blocked even. You also want to make sure that the safety and security of minors is ensured, or that the best effort is made for that. Unlawful activities by minors online, unauthorized disclosure of personal information regarding minors. So you want to make sure that at your schools you're having the types of assemblies that teaches them how to have safe, most people have a white ribbon week, or depending on your school, where you actually talk about internet safety. And so that's definitely programs that need to continue to happen in order to remain compliant with CIPA. You also want to restrict minors' access to material that might be harmful to them, and that could be about illegal drugs or pornography or any of the different categories out there that, even dating sites. If they're minors and, they're on dating sites, that might be setting them up for online predators for sure. So there's different things, and you kind of have to gauge what that's going to be for you. Education of appropriate online behavior, and certainly education about what cyberbullying is and how to avoid it, as well as any reporting methods that you want to actually entail there. Because a lot of that's going to be reporting through the staff that you currently have. And then also you want to have a policy that talks about monitoring those online activities for minors as far as the internet safety policy is concerned. So there's quite a few different pieces and parts to that. The certification really is about you or the relevant school or school board or local educational agency basically declaring your certification. And that's a declaration you make and you need to have on file in case someone does come in and do an audit for you. Untangle does not provide the certification for that. We provide the technology measure protection. It's always kind of funny to me how there's some other vendors that we compete against with that talk about buying their machine and then becoming CIPA compliant. And really, CIPA compliance is more about you certifying that you've done all the efforts that you need to go through. And it's above and beyond just buying a tool. That's one big piece of it, but that's certainly not the only thing you need to do as an organization. And as you can see here, the certifications also would be for a library or a library board or other authority. And again, this is all tied back through the E-rate funding and the fact that that's kind of what the government can hold over you if you're not CIPA compliant. In addition to the fact that you could be audited. I'm not sure if they typically hire the E-rate guys, or the USAC guys, to be honest, are the ones that you have these third parties that come in and actually do audits on a regular basis. So if you haven't been audited yet, that's just something you want to keep in mind, and make sure you have the paperwork all squared away and all of your documentation about what you're doing as far as your certification and your CIPA compliance. That way you make sure that you can avoid any fines or any issues as far as your E-rate funding being revoked. But again, the last and probably the most important is that the effectiveness measure has, they've declined to actually provide a litmus test as to what's effective and what's not. So, make your best effort. Blotting, a lot of this comes down to your documentation and having technology and protection measures in place that you feel comfortable with and that you're able to do and to certainly use. Some of the other considerations you might have, though, for CIPA is it only addresses a subset of what really most people would consider acceptable use on their networks. In addition, the filtering content and applications that you want to do really does kind of go beyond the visual depictions that CIPA talks about. So you want to make sure that you make your best efforts there as well. You also need to protect your computers and networks against viruses and spyware and other malware by filtering for those on the open protocols like HTTP, FTP, SMTP, POP, and IMAP. And there's plenty of other protocols as well. As far as the demonstration of Untangle, we offer Untangle as a install on a network, and typically we're installed as a bridge. And you can see here we have a firewall at the edge of the network with a DMZ server plugged into it, or web servers, whatever you might have there. And then you put Untangle between that router firewall and between that and the next network switch, or the core switch on the network, depending on how large your organization is. That's the most popular way that Untangle is installed. But we certainly can replace the router firewall depending on your configuration and setup. And if you need us to basically act as a transparent bridge while your current router firewall is active and in place, then once the licensing for that expires, you're welcome to take Untangle from a bridge mode and move us up the stack and put us in front of your entire network if you need to. As far as the actual Untangle goes, down here, just jump into the actual demonstration. This is an Untangle that I have sitting on a desk next to me, and this manages the home network that I have for my home office. You can see there's quite a few different things in the rack here. We have a virtual server rack as our metaphor for managing Untangle. A lot of people have basically like that metaphor because it's easy to understand, and each of them has a settings button. Each of them has a help button that takes you to the portion of our online documentation or our wiki that will give you more information about that. We've got some blingers here where you can actually modify what they say. So if you want to add different things to your blingers, you can actually do that. There's different things that you care about. And certainly you can see what your transmit and receive speeds are, or what they currently are as Untangle sees it. You can also see what your session counts are, TCP versus UDP, and then a total. You can also check and see what the number of processors that Untangle is recognizing on your network. And then, of course, your load averages over 1, 5, and 15 minutes, and then your total uptime as well as your processes. You can see your total memory that's being used as well as the swap file usage and what that looks like, as well as your hard disk space and the utilization of that. There's a lot of things you can actually see just directly from the initial panel. You'll notice a couple of other items here. We have a drop-down here where you have a default rack, and I've created a student rack as an example. I'll show you that in a minute. You've got a policy manager that you can actually manage multiple racks and different policies that apply to different sets of users. We've added some new features called the show sessions, which I'll talk about in just a minute, and then also show hosts. And so those are some new things where you can see some real-time information about what's going on right now on the network and who's connected and what they're doing. As far as the different items here, we have the virtual server rack is divided into two different sections. The top half is basically application modules. And the reason we have it divided in two is because the application modules, when you have more than one rack, you can actually configure them in different iterations. So you could have a web filter policy for the default rack, and then you could have a completely different web filter policy for a student rack or an additional rack or racks that you create inside Untangle. Same with Virus Blocker. Anything that's grayed out, what I've done on this particular instance is I actually have my parent rack, or the rack that my student rack will refer to, is the default rack. So if I don't configure it on the student rack, it's basically just going to inherit the settings from the default rack. And so that makes it so that you can actually only make changes on what's different, or at least which modules are different. So that's why there's some grayed out different things here. Now the bottom half of the rack, that's basically the services rack. So under services, these are basically unilateral services. So they're the same for everyone. So the reports are the same. The policy manager, which you can also access at the top of the rack like I showed you. The directory connector, we only support one Active Directory domain, but you can put it up at the top of your domain tree if you want. As far as the WAN failover, WAN balancer, those are things that you can control basically for the entire Untangle box. And then, of course, we have IPsec VPN when you're doing site-to-site VPNs between Untangle and another IPsec box, whether it's Untangle or some other box. And then, of course, we offer OpenVPN and some other items like Attack Blocker. OpenVPN is an SSL-based VPN, which is typically used for client-to-site VPNs. Got our configuration backup. We've got branding manager and then a live support module where you can actually click that and submit a support ticket through that. Some of the items that I wanted to cover off today, though, we basically have our web filter. We've got application control and bandwidth control. Those are typically the most popular items on the list of things that we support and that we do. As far as what that looks like, Untangle's web filter has the ability to block quite a few categories, and we'll talk about the specifics of those numbers. But you can block and flag different items, and it gives you the ability to control them accordingly. You also have the ability to block HTTPS traffic either by IP address and the categorization that we've done by IP, or by the server name indication. On most modern browsers, they'll actually resolve on the server name too. You have the ability as well to set up specific rules for specific websites. If you want to add an asterisk, which is a catch-all, then you can put an entire domain in there and different items that you can pick from. You also have the ability to block file types. So if you want to get granular down to the file level, you can. Or if you even want to get more granular, you can go down to the MIME type. And there's quite a few more of those listed, 6 different pages of different items that you can control. We have the ability on Untangle to actually enforce safe search. And the safe search is going to be on Google and other popular search engines. You can also enforce YouTube for schools if you want. So what you would do is go to YouTube for Schools website and create your profile with them, and then you'd actually enter your custom identifier for your specific YouTube for Schools account, and that will append that to any request that you're making to YouTube through Untangle. You also have the ability to do a bypass or unblock, and you can do none, which basically means that they can't bypass it, or you can do temporary, which gives the ability to bypass a specific page or category for a limited amount of time, or you can actually have it be permanent and global. Typically, we don't recommend you do permanent and global because what happens with that is it will let them access that content, but it will also add that particular site or category to, particularly the site, to the actual pass list, which you can manage here. And again, if you have more than one iteration of the web filter, certainly you might need that, depending on what you're doing. Then you need to manage the web filter for the default rack and the student rack independently, since they're not really related to each other and since they're for different sets of users. So keep that in mind as well. As I mentioned before, there's a help button, so you can actually click on the help if you are looking at a particular item and you want to learn a little bit more about that. We've got our online indication or online wiki for you to basically do some quick reading and learning. Each Untangle box has got a help button throughout the interface. You can see here, if we've got a help button here, it's going to take us to this section. The help button here is going to take us to that section. So depending on what you're looking at, that's where the help button is going to take you. And so it's going to give you quite a bit of information that you can do. As far as the application control module, this has the ability to block different application protocols. And we've got a bunch of signatures out there. We can block or we can flag. The other thing it can do is it can tarp it based on it will let the connection happen, but it will actually stop any data from transmitting. And there's lots and lots of different things on here as far as the different application modules that we can actually monitor and or help to prioritize and deprioritize. So the bandwidth control module is one of the ones that you would use in order to do that prioritization. And what basically you can do is run a bandwidth control setup wizard, and I've already run it on mine. I'll just go through part of it here. And you can set up your download and upload bandwidth for a particular connection. And you want to be as close to accurate as you can be based on the measured bandwidth that you have rather than necessarily what you're paying for. In addition, you can set up the type of configuration you want to go with, whether you're a school or a college or university. And when you select different things, it's going to have different benefits and priorities and just deprioritize different things. So if you go to school, you can see it heavily limits BitTorrent usage and deprioritizes web traffic from download sites. And then, of course, you can adjust those as you need to as you go through. You can also add quotas for different sets of users or different ranges of your network. Maybe you want to provide a quota for the people that are bringing in their own device, and you want to make sure that they are not overutilizing bandwidth because they're going to be taking bandwidth away from the regular users. And you can decide how long the quota is going to be in place for, whether it's going to be renewed every hour, day, or week. And then, of course, you can determine the size. It's defaulted to 1 gig here, but you can adjust this depending on when your actual quotas expire. And then also you can decide what happens to them as far as their traffic and what their priority goes to once their quota has been exceeded. So essentially what we can do, let me just cancel out of that. I'm going to probably just run through this real quick again since I'm actually on a home network. I want to change it slightly. So we'll just adjust it to where you can see it's got a little bit different setup. But by doing that, you can actually see the different rules that you have the ability to view and or adjust as needed. You can come in here and you can set up a specific rule based on any of these different things, whether it be destination address or even you want to do it based on the content or even the client operating system. So you have the ability to come in and adjust how things actually work if you want it to be based on the host name or even the application control category. So a lot of people will identify different applications that they want to deprioritize, and they'll use bandwidth control to control that. And you can come in and you can say, well, you're going to be doing that particular type of traffic. We're going to put you in the penalty box. And we're going to put you in there for however many minutes we want to do. So for 500 seconds or whatever, however long you want to have them in there. So you can really play around with this and figure out how you want to actually restrict the users on your network based upon what is important to you and you want to control them. Gives a lot of power back to you as a network admin. Typically when people are bringing different items in, it's very frustrating not to be able to control them at all. One of the cool things about the Untangle is this new session viewer that we have available. So you can see the different sessions that are actually happening on the network, and this is on the network I'm on currently. I've got my daughter's Chromebook here connected, and you can see, just wake her machine up again. And if we go to a particular website, so I went to CNN, so there's quite a few different things that have opened up because of that, because of the way CNN's website works. Lots and lots of different embedded pieces of content. So you can actually view the session that's happening, or sessions. So if I wanted to do it specifically off of her particular computer, I'd see this IP here. And then, of course, if I was using the Active Directory, I'd see the username listed. And then I could actually do that. You can see the policy, what policy is actually applying to this person or this particular session, and other pieces of information like their server interface, their pre-NAT IP address, their post-NAT IP address, as far as the server, where they're going, what port they're going across. And if you want to add additional pieces of information, you can do that. You just come here to the actual columns, and then you can pick and choose if you wanted to add items that you care about. So you can actually see different things. We certainly didn't add them all because we didn't want to. I'll just do priority here so you can see what that looks like. So you can see that we've added the QoS priority based on the particular traffic that it is. And whether it's high traffic or whether it's medium, depends on your settings for that particular setup. So the sessions viewer is very powerful to be able to kind of diagnose what's going on right now, what different applications are being used, what can I do about it. And then if you go to hosts, you can actually see as well the list of hosts that are connected. We've got my laptop here, and we've got my daughter's Chromebook. You can see this CROS indicates what her OS is that she's using. And of course, we've got other items here we can see too if we wanted to see what the actual user agent would be. So it tells us a little bit more about her information. And so this is fairly powerful for you. Obviously, if you had any penalty box listings, you would actually be able to see and manage those here. You could actually control whether they stay in the penalty box or whether you remove them. And then, of course, your quotas. You can decide the current quotas. You can even refill the quota from the host viewer, depending on what the situation is, if it's a teacher or a student or something of that nature. So there's lots and lots of different things that you have the ability to do. I didn't cover this just yet other than briefly. Is with the Untangle, you have the ability to actually do a couple things with Active Directory on our directory connector. You can set it up so that Untangle will actually interface with your Active Directory server. Again, I don't have that set up on my network. But you can have it talk to your Active Directory server, and so that when people log in to their actual machine, and this would be mainly for machines that are authenticated against the domain, and this is usually school-owned machines, that they actually then have to log in using their Active Directory credentials. Well, you put Untangle's logon script as a startup object on the domain controller, and so that when people log into Active Directory, this little Visual Basic script will run on their machine. So it identifies them as to who they are and what their IP address is, and so Untangle can actually have visibility into what they're doing. And that's one of the options. You also can set it up with the Radius connector. If you have a Radius server, it can do it doesn't do the logon script, but you can use our captive portal to make people log on there. And the captive portal, we can just show you what that looks like. A lot of people want to use this for their bring your own device type setups. You can see that my daughter's machine is recently logged in and how many sessions she's actually been doing since she's been logged in. You can set up capture rules. The capture rule I have is just specifically for her machine. But the rules, you can base them off quite a few different things. So, for example, if I have Active Directory and I have basically a setup where the users bring in their own devices, or you're allowing that, you can set it up so that if the username is not known, then basically you would put here. In other words, if I don't know who it is, let's go ahead and change it to this. If it's not something that already is known, then what it will do is the captive portal rule will come up and say, okay, you need to log in. And of course, that would be one portion of what you'd want to set up in captive portal. The other would be the captive page, what that's going to look like. So you'd set up the basic login to do that, and that would require them to log in and actually put in their credentials. If you wanted to view what the current page, let's just go ahead and hit save. Oop, I'm going to change this back to, basic because this is the one I have set up right now. So if you wanted to actually see what the page looks like, then you just come down here to the view, and that's what the captive portal is going to look like for the user, whether it be on their iPhone or their Android phone or their laptop, if you're allowing them to bring those in. And then they just check the box and click continue. And of course, if I had the acceptable use policy, I could actually copy and paste that in there if I wanted. And that's where you put in this information here. You just copy in your acceptable use policy and indicate that by agreeing to this, or that clicking here, they're agreeing to the acceptable use policy and to those terms. So you could also do a redirect if you wanted to the school website or some other website if you needed to. After they actually check the box, you can actually have it push them to a specific page if you'd like. So there's lots of different options. Again, the user authentication you can pick from would be a local directory even. We have that. And that's a directory you can create yourself if you want. We'll have the radius as well as the Active Directory. You can decide how long the timeout is going to be. So you'll see here it says unauthenticated after this amount of idle time. And it will actually make them re-authenticate. But you can also allow concurrent login. So maybe they have a laptop that they use that's device that the school owns, but they also bring in their cell phone and do their own device that way. Then you could allow concurrent logins for them, thus continuing the filtering that happens even if they have a couple of different listings for themselves. So there's quite a few different options you have with Captive Portal and the other features we've talked about. There's plenty of different things we could go over today, but with lack of time, we can kind of jump back. Are there any questions that we need to broach or to touch on the call?
It doesn't look like anything's coming through. It looks like you're doing a good job, but feel free, folks, to send in any questions, technical, sales related, and we're happy to answer this for you. Just use your question and answer panel on the right-hand side of your screen.
Fantastic. Well, as far as the presentation goes, we basically have the education packages. There's two different options you have. You can buy an appliance from Untangle directly, either our U-Series or M-Series appliances, and those come bundled with our software on them. And we also have the option for you to build your own hardware to obtain it yourself, and then you can get a software subscription purchase as well. So the hardware that we offer is purpose-built hardware, and it's specifically designed to be plug-and-play and to work. We guarantee that as far as our product is concerned. The actual bundled pricing does give you a little bit of savings. We also offer some extended warranties. And then, of course, we are currently shipping not just in the U.S., but to the Canada and also to the European Union. So any of those of you that might be in attendance that might be outside of the U.S., Canada, or the European Union, we typically recommend that you do a freight forwarder where you ship it to one of the someone in those locations and then have them forward that freight onto you. If you're going to do that, though, we do recommend that you get our cold spare hardware, because obviously if you have a problem, we don't want you to be down for longer than it takes for you to ship the box or have us ship the box back to us to be looked at and fixed. Software only certainly allows you the ability to spec the box however you'd like as far as the capabilities if you need to upgrade it, so that is definitely gives some flexibility to that as well. Here's a look at kind of a glance of what our appliances look like. We've got our everything from a U10 to an M3000, and if you are planning on using your own hardware, certainly look to these to spec out a box yourself based on the number of devices you're going to be supporting on the inside. That's kind of where the names of those devices come from, the U10 versus the M3000. Of course, we have several of the features we talked about, a little bit more detail about them. The Education Premium package and Education Standard package come with our Supercharged Web Filter, and this basically dynamically is categorizing websites on the fly. In addition to having a base database that starts out at over 450 million URLs that have been categorized. And so it's 140 plus categories and over 99% coverage as far as the databases or the 1 million, top 1 million websites out there that are concerned. So, here's a little comparison that's kind of new. I haven't shared this with anybody on the webinar previously other than individually. This is a kind of a comparison that I've put together as I've been able to compare Untangle to different vendors that we compete against. And as you can see in the URL database column, we've got quite a bit more than most of the other vendors that we compete against. And a lot of this is based off of information I could find on their websites, and some of them I even made a phone call to. You know, when you're talking about Barracuda, they've got a 40 million URL database as compared to Untangle's 450 million. So the differences are pretty stark, and whether they have enough categories for you to utilize, or even if it's real-time or not. And some claim to be real-time, some really aren't. And certainly miscategorizations, couldn't find a huge amount of information on that because a lot of them try to give the information that, or present themselves as someone that doesn't make mistakes. But certainly there are always going to be mistakes out there, and you want to make sure that you have somebody that's giving you the full facts about what their product really does. And you know, certainly welcome to contact me. I'm more than happy to share this particular page with you. Again, this webinar is going to be recorded, and if there's any other additions or maybe corrections that you can share with me, I'd be more than happy to add those to this particular comparison page. So hopefully you find that helpful as well. Here's an example or sample of some of the categories that Untangle offers in the 141 that we offer. Quite a few different listings there, as you can see. Under the inappropriate, you can see that we not just block pornography and sex, but also nudity. In some cases, if it's an art class, they maybe need to look at nudity. It just depends. And a lot of that's going to be closely monitored and controlled by you guys, I'm sure. So lots of different options for you. Under our application control and bandwidth control, we've got over 591 traffic types and 766 applications. And of course, bandwidth control, we kind of covered this off actually in the interface because it's kind of a review for you to see what we actually have the capability of doing on it. So hopefully that's helpful for you. And then of course, the Education Standard package versus the Education Premium package, they're specifically priced. So the Education Standard package is to really help you to meet your CIPA compliance needs and the technology protection measures there. We do offer the unlimited user site licensing available. Each Untangle server has to have its own set of licensing, but you can buy as large of a pricing bucket as you need. In the premium package, there's some features that are not included in the standard package, and there's a way you can actually go on our site. Actually, I don't think I have that comparison on here, but let me jump over to our site and show you the comparison page. If you click on software packages at the top of our site, you can actually see kind of an overview, packages in a nutshell. But if you want to know what does that mean and what does this mean, you can actually scroll down a little further to the package comparison by applications. So you can see whether virus blocker is included in the standard package. It looks like it's not. And as you go down through, you can see some of the other things that are not included. You can also see web cache, bandwidth control, WAN balancer. They're not included in the education standard package. And then, of course, other items. But by and large, you're going to have a pretty good experience when you're actually testing Untangle out. We certainly recommend that you visit this page as well. If you need information about our spin code, you can actually click on the E-rate link here on our page, and actually it'll give you the spin code that you need in order to submit for E-rate funding with the technology protection measure that we offer. And then, of course, as far as the other information we can provide you, Untangle's, we're here to help. We want to make sure that you have a good experience. We certainly encourage you, if you haven't yet already, download a free trial today. You get a free trial of 14 days where you can try it out, full functionality. And certainly, if you need an extension on that, you can let the sales team know, and we can actually extend that trial for you. And certainly, if you have any questions, you're welcome to email us at sales@untangle.com, or you can give us a call at 1-866-233-2296. And hopefully, we'll be hearing from you soon, or we can work with you soon. Certainly, I know some of the people in attendance today are already Untangle users, and we've got some new cool features coming in version 10. Hopefully, it's going to be sometime this summer. I'm not sure of the dates there, but that's something that we're looking forward to in a big way. So, if there's no further questions, I don't think we had any that came across the line, at least. I know that a lot of them are being answered on the back end. We really appreciate your attendance today and taking the time to take a look at Untangle. We certainly hope that you'll look at Untangle very seriously when you compare it to other vendors out there and the protection needs that you have regarding your network and your 2013-2014 school year. A lot of people are on the fiscal half, and hopefully we can help you be able to protect your organization. Without any further ado, I think we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you again for your attendance, and hopefully you have a great rest of your week and a good weekend.